Today we're replacing clothing faster than ever, and you could argue that these secondhand platforms is not so much a part of the solution as they are part of the problem. And there we are. Hello everybody, my name is Gitte Marie, and in today's video we'll be talking about Vinted, secondhand platforms, and why some secondhand platforms are doing what they're doing. Also, we'll come back to the age-old question, what's the best secondhand platform and which ones should you stay away from? Is there actually some platforms that you should stay away from? The answer might surprise you. I've gotten that question quite a few times, so I thought today, let's talk about it. Also, I've seen some development with Vinted that I really want to talk to you guys about. Also hear you guys' opinion. So that's what we're doing. We're talking about the mothership of secondhand shopping. But I think a really good disclaimer is that no matter where you shop secondhand shopping is always better than buying new. The purpose of this video is not to make someone feel as though they thought they did a good thing and now they find out that the thing they did wasn't actually a good thing or it wasn't good enough. Then we can just like keep the spiral of disappointment and eco-anxiety going on forever, right? That's not the purpose of this at all. No matter where you shop secondhand, you're doing a good thing. It's better than creating demand for a new product. Always and without a question. But I want to talk about Vinted because it's giving corporation in the worst possible way. But before I get into why, if you don't know Vinted, Vinted is an online secondhand site like we know them. They're quite plentiful. We have Sadar, we have Depop, we have ThredUp, you are probably thinking of some that I didn't mention here. But the idea is you as a private consumer can put your old clothes up for sale and other people can buy it and then you ship it and then bada bing bada bum, you bought secondhand clothing. And Vinted specifically has gone ham on the marketing. It's everywhere in Denmark, and the reason why that is, I think as well, is because Vinted recently bought out a Danish secondhand platform. And I'll get back into that in a second. So you're seeing Vinted probably, at least I am, a lot of people are, I guess, a lot of marketing, a lot of advertisement for Vinted on your social media, but I also see it just like on the street, on billboards, etc. It's a Lithuanian company. I think it was founded in 2008 by two entrepreneurs. So in that regard, girl boss. Amazing. It's not a bad concept whatsoever, and the people behind Vinted also, as far as I could tell, aren't like the worst people in the world, which is always nice to know. I'm always so scared to look into companies that I actually kind of like, just to find out that the people behind it are monsters. It happens more than you know. The reason why I say that Vinted is turning into a corporation in the worst possible way is because they're currently buying out small secondhand platforms. They did it in the Netherlands with United Wardrobe, and they did it in Germany with Rebel, and they've recently done it in Denmark with the trend sales. So they're buying out all of these small platforms and merging them with Vinted, the mothership. And I have thoughts. There are multiple reasons as to why I think it's better to have multiple small platforms than just one big one, both in terms of the future of secondhand clothing, but also in terms of the user experience from the people selling their clothes. Up until recently, I was one of them. I have been using the Danish app Trend Sales for ages. I think it was one of the first places in Denmark that wasn't a thrift store that you could buy secondhand clothes, secondhand furniture, home decor, basically everything really. And what I really liked about this platform specifically is that it was searchable. You could do a profile, you could save your favorite pics, you could search for sizes and colors. And coming from a place where the only other way of getting secondhand clothes and secondhand anything was via thrift stores and secondhand stores, this was luxury. This was absolute luxury, being able to search for your size. Oh. And my favorite thing is that it was location specific. Firstly, it wasn't a very big community because it was in Denmark, and Denmark is a small country, but you could also filter via location, so you could see what was for sale in your very local neighborhood, which means that you often ended up saving on postage. I just biked to the people selling their stuff, and it's very nifty if you're looking for furniture or like bigger pieces that you want. It's very nice to know that it's not 5 hours away, but it's 45 minutes away. Really only something you see with more local, smaller, national communities. These second-hand reselling platforms are born out of a problem with overconsumption. Consumers have been buying goods, furniture as well, and especially so clothing for the past 20 years without thinking. And yes, we were buying clothing before, but over the past 20 years, what we've been seeing is that people have started buying more and more stuff and using it for shorter and shorter periods of time. We're buying twice as much and using it for half as long. And that is a huge problem. And it's a fairly new problem as well. And it's all thanks to fast fashion. I'm never gonna do that again, I'm so sorry. Today, many consumers buy buy without thinking about it. It's a spur of the moment impulse buy kind of thing. We buy without trying the clothes on, without thinking if this is something that works for us long term. We buy to make ourselves feel better. Hashtag retail therapy. And unless you have a Mr. Big type of person to buy your walk-in closet with double doors, there's no way that that kind of consumption level can fit into a normal person's wardrobe. So we sell it. So some people looked at the fact that the average consumer uses only 13% of their wardrobe and thought, I can make money out of this. And in and of itself, this is also a brilliant idea. These secondhand platforms started popping up everywhere where you could sell your old clothes, you can make a little bit of your money back. So you could buy new clothes. You could also simply donate to charity, but that doesn't really refuel the shopping addiction. And this is a very cynical perspective, but give me a moment. Because I want something to be abundantly clear. This dynamic, this development, the refueling of this shopping addiction through secondhand shopping is not only the responsibility of consumers, because a lot of these secondhand platforms is using that exact vibe in their advertisement. The sell your old clothes so you can buy new clothes angle in the marketing campaign is everywhere. And it's not really slowing down the consumer pace with which we're consuming clothes, which we should be slowing down. Like we should be hitting the brakes so hard currently, like you have no idea. You could argue that that marketing angle, that advertisement perspective affects consumers, not just consumers, into keeping up that pace instead of slowing down. Today we're replacing clothing faster than ever, and you could argue that these secondhand platforms is not so much a part of the solution as they are part of the problem. To paint with a very wide brush here, but it's once again up to the consumer to learn about conscious consuming and use the tools available in the best possible way. As with any tool, it can be repairing, but it can also be destructive. And currently, the platforms themselves have a business model, or at least a marketing strategy, that tends to be towards the more destructive side, aka keeping the pace up in our consumption cycle. So back to the merging of smaller companies into the big company. When I read about this, I thought instantly this is giving Coca-Cola energy. And Coca-Cola was neither the first nor the last corporation to do this, but they're pretty notorious, as well as Unilever, PepsiCo, the places we're boycotting. They have been pretty notorious for buying out small competitors and merging them with their own big brand, ultimately creating a monopoly on the market. And I have, once again, thoughts and feelings about this. I don't think capitalism care about my feelings, but I hope that you guys do. But why are monopolies bad? Well, if we're putting on our cynical thinking caps, and you know I do love that, it's my favorite accessory. You could say that once a company owns everything, there's really not the same type of incentive to create the best possible user experience. If a company owns everything, or at least a large part of the market, they can implement whatever guidelines, whatever rules, whatever sort of percentages of the price that they earn from each sale. If they don't have to think about competitors, they can implement whatever guidelines and new rules that they want. And if people are leaving the platform for another platform, we'll tough shit because they also own the other platform. In a situation where you want to boycott a certain platform based on what investments this company is making, it also ends up being really difficult if that company owns every fucking option. And this is very cynical from the perspective that every company never has the good experience of the consumer as their first priority. And of course, that's just not always the case. However, I think that several smaller companies is better than one major mothership of a company. And then there's also just the notion of supporting a local company, which just feels better because it drives more incentive to support a local community. And overall, supporting a smaller company that works within your community is just going to be more beneficial than supporting an international mothership. I read a Danish article about the merging with Vinted and trend sales, and a lot of the trend sale users were worried about it, at least the people that were cited in the article. First of all, Vinted started by firing all 79 employees at trend sales. And one guy in the article said that when he tried to call for support because he had a selling issue with some of his ads, they also replaced actual customer service with a digitalized helping tool. That's the worst thing that you can do to me. I hate it. I want to talk to a real person. Call me old-fashioned. And a lot of people are worried that the user experience is going to decrease from this merge. And now there's no way of saying that this will continue to be the case. Maybe this is just like a temporary state. Either way, I definitely think I would have preferred if trend sales had stayed their own entity. But of course, I also don't know how their financials are looking. Was the alternative that there weren't the trend sales at all? I don't know. Overall, I tend to see more benefits from using smaller local and in this case national companies rather than using international corporations, which the other vibe is giving. When you have smaller companies, you're able to tailor to a certain smaller demographic, and that just makes the user experience so much better. I would, however, love to hear what you guys think about this. And now to answer the question, is there a better secondhand platform than other secondhand platforms? Here's my take. Of course, I would never tell someone to not shop secondhand or to not use a specific platform, because all secondhand is better than buying new. But ultimately, I think it is beneficial to look at who owns the secondhand platforms we're using, and ultimately, where does our money then end up? One really good example of this is Sellpy. Sellpy is a secondhand platform with a very similar business model to Vinted and to Depop, etc., where consumers sell their clothes onto other consumers. Very nice and very simple. There's just the thing. Sellpy is owned by H&M Group. So ultimately the money this company generates ends up at H&M. So if you're buying secondhand to avoid fast fashion because you're not supporting these companies, you're kind of still supporting the companies if you buy from Sellpy. Obviously, you can take this with a grain of salt if you want. You could argue that, well, probably the majority of the revenue goes into keeping the platform and this company alive, and perhaps it's only a tiny fraction of the revenue that actually ends up going to H&M Group. I haven't used Sellpy because I know it's H&M Group, and I have seen that they're also still, even though it's a secondhand platform, pushing for products from H&M, from COS, from Monkey, from Arket, etc., because H&M Group also owns those companies. I've previously used Depop quite a lot. It's nice because I have an international audience, so when I have put my clothes up for sale, it's very rarely just people from Denmark that are interested in buying them. So I like to use a platform where there is an international shipping opportunity. I've used trend sales simultaneously with Depop, so my clothes have been up on several platforms. Anyway, what I don't like about Depop specifically is that people on there are delusional. Absolutely fucking delusional. People are buying cheap things in thrift stores and selling them with a markup. It's the gentrification of thrift stores, which we could do a whole video about as well. And I just don't want to pay 175 euros for a black t-shirt. And some people think that it's worth that. And it's secondhand, girl, just cut us an actual break. I recently saw someone trying to sell Forever 21 shorts for $300 on there. I'm all for accepting the actual value of a product based on the hours that went into making it and the actual material value, but we're talking about secondhand clothes. And you did not pay that for these. And you know this can happen on all secondhand platforms, but it's definitely very rife on Depop. I would also take it with a huge grain of salt if any seller says something is vintage and it doesn't quite feel it, because very often it's from 2008 and that's not what you're looking for when you go for vintage. It's just... But ultimately, whatever platform works for you is fine. Buying secondhand is always better than buying new. I have used a combination of a local site and an international site, and it's primarily been Depop. I might move over to a different platform if I keep seeing the markup of these products, which is insane. But that's sort of where I am, and those are my recommendations, if you will. I also just still recommend checking out your local thrift stores. A lot of them are supporting charity organizations, which I think is massively important. But I'll leave some video recommendations about secondhand shopping and about this secondhand hierarchy in Europe. I'll leave those down below if you're interested. I hope this was helpful. Thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about the merger of Vinted and several small brands. And if you see any upsides, downsides, also let me know which secondhand platforms you're using. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing day. I will see you guys next time. Take really good care of yourselves. Until then, bye. Thank you so much for watching this video, and also a special thank you to my Patreon supporters. You guys help me create green, zero waste content, and I love you guys. You can find the links to my social media accounts down below and the link to my Patreon on this screen. Bye!